And here we are. Good morning. Are we live?
Yeah.
We are live. Okay, you know what? Let's switch that monitor there to program if we can, because I'm just seeing the overlays. This is our second installment of Good Morning Mug Club. Live, by the way, we want to see your chat over there at BlazeTV.com.
Yeah, that's right.
BlazeTV.com. We will be reading your live chat. Do leave a name or an alias, because we haven't quite worked. We wanted to get this up really quickly for you. We don't quite have the screen usernames working right. Can we just shut that monitor off or make it program? Because I'm seeing everything that Gibbon is working on right now as overlays, which I very much appreciate.
Oh, yeah.
We have a lot to get to. We'll be talking about Joe Biden's latest sexual assault allegations, the latest COVID-19 Wu flu updates,
please,
as well as the stimulus bill. And what do you have some problems with that? And let us know in the chat. Listen, leave your name and what do you want us to talk about most? This is a more interactive show. It's more like a radio show, what they call the podcasts.
Oh,
the kids.
The little podcast.
And the reason we're doing this, like I said, is we're not first responders. We're not doctors, so we can't create any. We don't have a pillow factory. So we can't create any new masks for you, but what we can do is provide you with more content, because we know that you're going a little bit stir crazy, especially since the quarantine has been extended. So it is hashtag MugClubQuarantine. If you want to send in pictures of you with your mug, we might be reading some of those later or tonight. Yep. And aloudwithcrowder.com/schedule is where you go to see the full schedule of programming for the entire month of April, and use a promo code Quarantine. louderwithcrowder.com/MugClub. You get $30 off. That's our biggest discount since the Vox apocalypse. And please, final thing, if you are already a member of Mug Club, please do consider, please just renew, because otherwise, Vox has won.
This is a great time to do that.
This is a great time to do that.
Perfect time to jump right in.
It is a great time to renew. Okay, so we have a lot to get to, by the way, in the news. Before we get to the stories that we kind of want to talk about, we have to do some fact-checking from the morning, a morning roundup. So really quickly, I think we have this clip from Morning Joe, where they made the claim that everybody saw this coming early in January. Let's go to that.
Now, we've heard, Zeke Emanuel, that nobody could have seen this coming. The fact is, everybody saw this coming. Everybody saw this coming in early January. So I know I know you, like me. Now, we've heard, Zeke Emanuel.
Was that what he said? Is that all?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can't see what
it was. Just going in a circle.
If we can get program up there so I can see what it is that they're saying. Actually, here's the thing. The World Health Organization said that there wasn't any human-to-human transmission as of January 14th. Morning Joe, they didn't even mention on the show until January 24th, when they had an expert on there who was, by the way, on there to still say, don't panic about the COVID Wu flu. Here's another clip.
And how worried should Americans be? Should they panic?
Good morning, Mika. No, Americans do not need to panic. The Chinese are already panicking, as they should, because this virus is spreading all through the central parts of China, and it's a new virus. It has never been seen before, so its mechanism of spreading is not quite known yet. What I would suggest, however, is that Americans take this as a wake-up call for seasonal flu. We are not out of the flu season.
Really?
We've already had 15 million of the flu in the U.S. 140,000
That sounds like a dog whistle to me.
hospitalizations.
I don't know.
Hold on a second. Did I hear panic?
Yeah.
Did I hear panic? Is that what it was? Everybody saw this coming. I'm just going back to that interview, Morning Joe. I don't even know I just call him Morning Joe.
Right.
Because that's really his only value to society is just Joe in the morning. And this is the kind of Monday morning quarterbacking that you're seeing from the media. It is remarkable. We try to create it as a left-right thing. And this is important for people to know. Listen, like I said, I won't be shamed into panicking. We'll get into the numbers where some people yesterday, I don't know if it was Fauci or Bricks, not Hans Bricks, screw that guy. Bricks said the death toll could be 100 to 220,000 in the United States. And I know some people are panicked about that, so we'll talk about that a little bit more. But they tried to separate this, did you notice, into a left-right issue. Because before that, New York Times, BuzzFeed, as you see Morning Joe, they were all saying, don't panic, it's not any worse than the seasonal flu. They were wrong about that. Okay, we can all admit they were wrong about that. But then they tried to attribute the right, meaning conservatives, saying, hey, listen, we don't know everything yet. We do know it's not as deadly as people are now trying to tout this to be, so we shouldn't shut down our entire economy. So they've conflated the two. Everyone said it's nothing. Then they said, okay, it's something, and the right said, we just don't know how much of this something is, and is it worth the toll that it's taking on the economy? Therefore, they try to make it sound like we're deniers. They're using the same techniques right now, I notice, against people who think that this pandemic needs to be handled seriously, but needs to be handled with a balanced approach to both the livelihoods and the lives of Americans, and that's a problem.
Well, there are these things going around on Facebook and Twitter where it's like Trump found out about the virus on X date, and then this is the number of times he's like gone golfing since or something.
Right.
So it's like knowing about the virus is not the same as knowing the extent,
Right.
But before anybody died, and obviously his response was, his response could have been good, could have been bad, but the issue is not when he found out about it, it's when he found out about the severity, which depends on what information he's getting.
Right, which, by the way, this is something that people need to think about. How many times have you had the sniffles or had a sore throat and you thought, I think it's just allergies.
I'll wait it out.
And gone into work.
Yeah. Right.
Because you're like, it's not that serious.
Right.
That's effectively where we were before. And I don't just mean Americans. I don't just mean the government, the media. And certainly if you look at the timeline, Donald Trump was doing more than the media because it was around this time where he put a travel ban on China. It was around this time where he was actually consolidating so that we would have a pandemic response team or task force. I don't know the exact terminology. Don't hang me on it, because if it's a task force or pandemic response, you know what I mean to say. Promo code quarantine, $30 off. Let me know with your. Oh, by the way, I forgot that we do not have Gerald A. today.
Right.
We do not have half Asian Bill Richmond. But in third chair today, actually, as an expert on the Chinese flu, we do have Bruce Lee. Bruce, how are you, sir? Well, see, coronavirus can flow or it can crash. Coronavirus, if you put it into a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put coronavirus into a pillowcase, it becomes a pillowcase. If you put coronavirus into a rectum, what's wrong with you? Okay, I see what's going on there, Bruce.
I think he's a genius.
You know what? You were a horrible fighter, Bruce. You were a terrible fighter, absolutely, of no value, but you were brilliant, and I appreciate your expertise on Kung Flu.
I'm more scared of him now than I would have been if he were alive. So
yeah, Bruce. How did you get to be here? Okay, that's all. He's just going to do his key eyes. Not really of much value in third chair. We now know that my lawyer probably has a little bit more to contribute than Bruce Lee.
He's an expert of sorts.
Are corpses not immune from the coronavirus? I'm confused. It seems to me that's one of the benefits of the zombie apocalypse, is they don't need to worry about any.
One of several benefits.
One of several benefits. The immortality.
So many benefits are just coming off the top of my head.
And isn't it bizarre with zombies that immortality applies except the brainstem? Like we're combining this idea of sort of a pseudo-spiritual element, like they're the undead. They've come back. It's like, well, unless you hit that cervical vertebrae, then there's nothing God can do.
Get that medulla.
All right.
Some weakness,
So another morning roundup. Do we have the stinger for morning roundup?
We do.
Okay, morning roundup. And the First Baptist Bulletin is in the church foyer. So
be sure to take advantage of that.
You guys take advantage of it.
All Bible studies are canceled.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no.
We will have, unless it's a Bible study of 10 or less people.
Right, exactly.
And we're going to have, by the way, even Brendan on the show, because he has to wear a lot of protective gear because we're worried that he might be infected. And we'll have Brodigan, of course, senior news correspondent, on later.
That's exciting.
With the morning after, a roundup of all the news from the week, and, of course, traffic updates, because we want to keep you abreast here. So here's something that's pretty telling. You know, Donald Trump, right, actually, you know what, let's go to CNN really quickly before I trash them. I want to hear if they got themselves a microphone.
Well, in South Florida,
That's a no. Definitely not.
Florida governor under pressure to issue statewide shutdown. Now, this may seem trivial, right? May seem like it doesn't matter, and we will get to the projected death rates that they talked about last night. But this does matter because right now they have a chyron going on that Florida might be pressured to issue a statewide shutdown.
Yeah.
But there was nothing in the news that the FDA approved new drugs and therapeutics to combat coronavirus. There was nothing on CNN as far as a running headline telling people that we have the ability to sanitize up to 400,000 masks. And the MyPillow guy was speaking at a briefing because 75,000 masks will be coming out of his factory per day. So this would be totally fine in a 24-hour news cycle if it were the most important news, but it's not.
Well, and CNN knows that it is part of the pressure.
Right.
So, like, putting the chyron up is adding pressure to it.
Right.
So they're cooking it all. It's all basically using the news media as a way of steering politics.
Absolutely. Can you turn down the scene while we're not watching? I don't want to hear them. I don't want to hear them talking about that. That's incredibly distracting. So here's another fast fact, by the way. Donald Trump's approval ratings have been going up. Right? Let me doing. So here's if it does. So stock market this. That would be Trump doing this. Actually, the stock market does this, and if you look at it long term, it still does this. So if you sold all your stock, if you sold everything in your 401k, you screwed up. Right? This is not the time to
Bad
cash
plan.
out. Exactly. I don't care how much Cramer you watch. Is it Jim Cramer?
I don't remember.
He's the financial guy. He's the equivalent to
that the guy with
Gallagher.
the bat?
Where he's like,
Yeah.
right now, Apple is a hot stock. Bonk.
Yeah.
Smash a mug.
And like Gallagher, always funny.
Always funny. I want to take my financial advice from that guy.
That guy, yeah.
CNN, of course, because the approval ratings are going up, and this should be pretty telling, I think, to folks out there. Because remember Rachel Maddow came out not long ago and said, we need to stop airing the Trump press briefings.
Right, yeah.
Because this is propaganda. We need to stop airing it. And then I think it was HuffPo, these other websites said, we need to stop doing this because his approval rating was going up. Now, again, sort of like new media, when we're not being harmed by the algorithms, which is why we need to hit the notification bell, we do better than a lot of the shows that are on network television, right? Donald Trump, when he doesn't have to go through the intermediaries, when he doesn't have to go through these gatekeepers, there you go. Yeah, you can hit the notification bell, hit all notifications. If you're subscribed, of course, iTunes, Android, all of that. Crowder Bit, subscribe. We're putting up more content there than ever. If he doesn't have to go through them, in other words, he doesn't have to go through Maddow, people hear what he has to say directly, his approval ratings go up. Here's the thing. You may not like what Donald Trump has to say, but that's about as pure of a litmus test as you get. People watching him directly saying, all right, I like what he's saying. Now, you may want to fact check what he's saying, and that's your job as journalists. It's your job to fact check it correctly, by the way, not fact check Donald Trump because he says, we have some Fide liquids to sanitize a mask, and people go, there's no spray that'll sanitize a mask. He wasn't talking about a spray. He was talking about a machine. By the way, I just found out that our dryer, does anyone else have this? You can let me know in the chat. Our dryer here, our office dryer, has a sanitized steam cycle.
Oh, that's nice.
And then it also has...
You just throw all the masks in there.
Well, it has an antimicrobial cycle, too. And I'm not entirely sure that I understand the difference. But I do wonder if people mocked Donald Trump mercilessly for saying, hey, we should be able to sanitize these masks. Like, is it outside of the realm of possibility if Whirlpool figured it out? If Dr. Kenmore made it work for us?
Why are they expecting the president to know about these chemicals that will sanitize things? He's just saying, hey, I think we might have some chemicals that could sanitize these masks.
Lo and behold,
let's try that.
It absolutely worked. And then the MyPillow guy said that God left public schools. So, you know, everyone gets to speak their piece.
So CNN may have been uncomfortable enough to pull the broadcast, but Fox and MSNBC both ran it. So they're pretending to be nonpartisan. They're pretending to be unbiased. But MSNBC, who is admittedly biased, Fox, who is admittedly biased.
And now that's the point. Now it's migrated to CNN. So CNN is taking cues from Salon.com and Rachel Maddow. I want to make that really clear. And then they'll go up with this logo that says just the facts. Right? That's the thing with CNN. I don't have a problem with Rachel Maddow. I don't. People say, why don't you focus on them so much?
Visually.
Maybe if we want to rebut them. That's fine. We want to rebut an argument. But I don't have a problem with media bias from MSNBC, from places like the Young Turks, from people who are opinion journalists. I don't. I have a problem with trying to claim that you are unbiased and lying to people about it. So last night, CNN refused to air President Trump's press conference, which is interesting because then they tried to pull some information from the press conference that they now think obviously makes the situation look very dire. So they want to tell people that everything is terrible, but they don't want to tell you that, hey, you know what, private industry has stepped up and we're going to have an abundance of masks and tests very quickly, despite the FDA and CDC. So, as a matter of fact, CNN, they didn't air, here's what's most telling. They didn't air the briefer last night. Instead, they decided that their news time would be best suited to covering this.
I don't know why you take your shot at that. I mean, just because you don't cook. I mean, Mom shares her secrets about how to make sauce. Very few people. I mean, you shouldn't criticize yourself that you're not one of the people that Mom saw as worthy to teach how to cook and make tomato soup.
Mom's spaghetti.
Well, look, I'm sure she would have. It's just that you spent so much more time in the kitchen, Chris, than I did.
By the way, do you notice he talks more Italian now?
Yeah,
two brothers.
You know, you had that always like Mom's little helper in the kitchen. I really respect that. So I think it's because you were there.
What is this?
And always underfoot.
Yeah, see, I don't see it that way.
How many? I mean, you spent years in the kitchen when you think of it.
I don't see it that way.
Find some common ground, brothers Cuomo.
I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't mean to offend you.
I think this is cute.
There's no offense taken. There's no offense taken.
No,
but what I'm saying is,
please. That you helped Mom in the kitchen was a beautiful thing. I had to do work.
I didn't help Mom in the kitchen.
Keep in mind that at this exact moment, they were talking about precautionary measures to be taken during this pandemic. CNN ran this.
You don't have to play the sound.
Can I ask you a question?
But I just hold on one second. You have a moment. I'm having a.
Where are you? Can I ask you, where are you?
I'm in a.
Mom wants to know. Mom wants to know where you are.
But where are you physically?
I'm in my
you're in
basement.
your basement.
That's what I just said. Yeah.
How long is this clip?
It's like 2 minutes.
We can cut it.
All right, we can cut away. The point is, at this time,
It just keeps
doctors, members of the CDC, our commander-in-chief, were providing valuable information to the American public, but they are so dead set on making sure that Donald Trump can't speak to you directly that they decided to air that
Two old men
on their
bickering
program
about their mom.
Cuomo's are nervous. Mom spaghetti. Shut up. I hope you both choke on your spicy meatball. And see, I figure if I do it without effort, it's not racist. If I said spicy meatball, maybe Media Matters can come after me.
there.
Right.
But if I just say spicy, more like Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum says that's a spicy meatball.
But you would never. Yeah, you would never do.
There it is.
Yeah, you never do an actual cartoonish caricature.
I would
not on this show.
I would never.
On
Not
this
on this
show.
show. What do you think about that, Bruce? Do you think that was responsible for the news cycle?
Well, see, if you put an asshole on CNN, CNN becomes the asshole. Asshole can fart or asshole can talk. At CNN, asshole get national platform.
It doesn't make any sense, Bruce. This is,
Yeah.
you know what? These tidbits are not
Bruce.
valuable.
I don't know. I think he's insightful.
See, that was a little ventriloquism. I don't need a special for it, Jeff Dunham. We get it. You got a puppet with a racist voice. What else you got? So here's
Old puppets.
So here's something else. And let me
young
know as we have
puppet.
chat. Put your name in there for the chat. We'll be live chatting with you folks over there on the Blaze. Dr. Birx, right? The U.S. officials initially responded to the coronavirus the way they did because they thought it was going to be more like, they said, more like a SARS type epidemic, not a global pandemic. Which, by the way, anyone know where SARS came from? There's a trend here.
Maybe.
Bruce? Sorry. Okay. We appreciate it. That's always, You started it.
He's repentant.
He is repentant.
Yeah.
Look,
he is
he's
not
a humble man.
Even as a drug addict / fraud fighter, he's
allegedly.
not beyond redemption.
Yeah.
No, he's a legend as well. And they said that they were missing. So again, I want to be careful here. I want to make sure that people understand we're not trying to downplay the pandemic. I want you to remember that the media, who is blaming President Trump for it for some reason, just like Hurricane Katrina was George W. Bush's fault.
Course.
Yeah.
Because he caught. Do you know how Hurricane Katrina started?
Tell me about it.
George W. Bush bought a plasma ball at Spencer's.
Whoa. I had no idea.
That's how it started.
And then flooded. Also, they decided to build a town, was it 500 feet below sea level? I don't know how else it ends.
That's a sidebar.
It's not that I'm not sympathetic, but I also don't fully understand why we're rebuilding at a place that has to have that happen again. Like, let's just, find the nearest, it doesn't even have to be a mountain, like a mound. Like, I would just say, let's make New Orleans like a pitcher's mound. Just make it, and just build. Was it Habitat for Humanity? Have Brad Pitt go in there and put it on a hill.
Yeah. Jimmy Carter, come on over.
Just put it on a hill so we don't have to blame it on the next president. So again, this is right now Dr. Birx talking about how they were missing a significant amount of data and they believe this is going to be more SARS-like. Here you go.
Could we have known something different? I think all of us, I was overseas when this happened in Africa. And I think when you looked at the China data originally and you said, oh, well, there's 80 million people or 20 million people in Wuhan and 80 million people in Hubei. And they come up with a number of 50,000.
I don't know.
You start thinking of this
ask
more
her
like
for a Dasani with
SARS
lime, no ice.
than you do this kind of global pandemic.
It's my beverage of choice when I fly.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things that are important. I've talked about this. There's a finite amount of resources with government. And this is something that the left gets perfectly wrong. So before I move on with more statistics, hopefully I can provide you a little bit of context here. And a lot of the times when people say, I just take issues as they come on an individual issue by issue basis. Right. You should look at every issue critically. But you should start off with a worldview. There's nothing wrong with an ism, provided that it is correct. Everyone has one. You need to be honest about it. And a worldview will help determine at least how you sift through information that is superfluous and you don't have time for. The left has an ism that is perfectly wrong. Let's look at, left, right, third party, man. This isn't for you right now. So, the right, we understand that free enterprise is not, it's not a finite sum. It's not a finite amount. A lot of the left, they say, I want a piece of my pie.
It's not infinite.
I want some of that cheddar. No, it's the opposite. It's not finite. It is actually. You can build more pies. Yeah. Let me go with this. So you can build more pies in the free enterprise. In other words, how do you build more pies? Well, you have a rotary phone, then you have a touchpad, then you have a cell phone. They have a cordless phone. Then you have an iPhone. So when people say the telecommunications industry is really hurting, guess what? And you say, I want a piece of my pie, your pie, now the iPhone is created. Now that creates work for whole new app developers, games, right? All kinds of software that have improved everybody's lives. You can go and bake more pies in a free enterprise system. By contrast, the government cannot bake more pies. There is a finite amount of money because you sooner or later, and sooner rather than later, run out of revenue that you can generate by taxing people. And that's something called the Laffer curve. A lot of people think we can just tax the wealthy at 100%. They leave. So it's even lower of a threshold than that. But let's say that's the ultimate threshold. You can tax people at 100%. The government can generate no more revenue than that effectively. Not including dividends or some of their investments, right? We understand that still, compared to the private sector. The left sees it differently. They see private industry as a piece of the pie. That's why Bernie Sanders or Cortez need to redistribute it. And then they look at government and see it as an infinite sum, that we should be paying people indefinitely, providing free healthcare, free internet, free take your pick. And I'm not exaggerating. In Germany, internet was declared a fundamental human right, which is dangerous because that means that the government can take away a right once they declare it to be a right under their purview. So this is, well, at least in those countries, they don't have a constitution. So the right understands private enterprise, you can bake more pies. Government, very limited in what they can generate. The left sees private industry as evil villains who need to have their wealth redistributed, and the government, this all-knowing altruistic entity that can generate profit from scratch. They couldn't be more incorrect, and that's how you are looking at two sides viewing this pandemic. So how you view the world matters before you look at it on an individual issue-by-issue basis. You need to determine how you understand the free market and the government's capability to extend these bailouts indefinitely.
And the longer the government props up these older industries, the slower that growth will be. To the slower that those new pies will end up being baked.
And then some of them just end up being cobblers. And you know what the truth is? You know what's most sad? I don't know the difference between a pie or a cobbler. I don't. I know the difference between
I thought you were talking about a shoemaker.
What's a cobbler?
It's a cobbler.
I don't know. It's a big dish.
What's a peach cobbler? Can we bring that up?
Yeah.
I know what an apple cobbler. What's a peach cobbler? I know what an apple crisp is. It's where it has an oaty crust. But I hear Southerners always like, he makes the best peach cobbler. First off, if you like peach anything, you're weird. It's disgusting. No fruit should have no fruit should run the risk of folliculitis. I do not like peaches.
I think it's the shape.
A pie and
a cobbler?
Yeah, I think it's the shape, and I think a pie.
Is a cobbler like baked with a top on it?
No, a pie has a. What are you talking about?
Pies have a top and a bottom.
I'm saying like a.
Oh, hold on. We have the overlay here. We have the fact. What's the difference between a cobbler and a pie? Do we know?
Well, Google has told us.
Yeah, on Google it says one way to differentiate between pie and cobbler is through the crust.
Oh.
Pies are encased in pastry, either just on the bottom or on both top and bottom. Cobblers, on the other hand, are simply topped with some sort of baked pastry or dough.
That sounds very much like a technicality. And I've never seen a pie in my life without a crust on top. I've never. Well, pecan
pie.
Forget about this. We've gone too far. We've gone too far, and
we're here for you.
Good morning,
MugClub. Bruce, what's your opinion on the pie and cobbler?
Well, see, if you put a pie into a crust, it becomes the crust. If you put a cobbler under the pastry, it becomes the pastry. Cobbler can float or it can crash. And cake is just a vehicle for frosting.
Well, okay, I understand.
That's true.
You're a pie guy.
Yeah.
He's a pie guy. What about
he's
more of a dumpling guy. Yeah. Here's another thing, too, that's pretty important. Finite resources. This is why I wanted to bring that up. So you understand there are finite resources with the government, that they cannot necessarily bake more pies. January 29th, what was Donald Trump doing? He was forming the coronavirus task force, January 29th. What were the Democrats doing around that time? Schiff was delivering on February 3rd closing impeachment arguments. So keep this in mind. When we now talk about how we should have known this was coming and the government should have been more on alert and done their job, I don't have the ability to bring up every single show and watch it in fast time for you throughout January 29th to February 3rd, but I'm willing to bet if you remember, go into your memory bank, you remember all of the headlines about Adam Schiff swats down Donald Trump.
Yeah.
AOC destroys Lindsey Graham. anything about the coronavirus being a global pandemic that Donald Trump wasn't prepared for? No, we were still on impeachment. And if you are president of the United States, or if you're a member of really any of the significant branches of government, you can't be both preparing for a global pandemic that nobody at that point had truly identified as a pandemic and simultaneously dealing with one of the biggest impeachment shams throughout all of American history.
Yeah.
There are only so many resources to go around. All of your headlines, CNN, were about impeachment and Adam Schiff. And now you want to go back and go, why wasn't the American public prepared? Because you basically were a glorified sub-network for C-SPAN. Running shift.
Yeah.
Like it was a morphine drip. And now, of course, the number has come out. So people are afraid. Brooke said the number could be 100,000 to 220,000 deaths. That'd be terrible.
If it was true.
I don't buy it. Now, let me tell you, this is just totally opinion. I think it's important to note that, first off, all of their projections have been wrong. Okay? Every single projection that they made have been wrong. In the UK, it was going to be 500,000. Now they're saying 20,000 or less. We talked about that yesterday. In the United States, they said 2.5 million. Now they're saying 100 to 200-something thousand. Also important to note is we don't really have the most accurate way of accounting for deaths that are solely coronavirus related. This is something people don't fully understand, that in any influenza season, about 7 to 14% of viruses that go around are some form of coronavirus, not this new form of, that's why it's novel coronavirus. But if you bring out Clorox or you bring out some industrial cleaner, you'll see that it says it kills coronavirus. So coronavirus has been around for a while. Even including what we have now, if you were to add them all under global influenza deaths, it wouldn't be significant enough at this point to be a blip. And something that's really important in New York City, this is what we're talking about, okay? New York City, they're saying if the country goes the way of New York City, we could have 100,000 to 220,000 deaths. And I'm not saying that cannot happen. But I do think we need some context here. I have a number of the 790 deaths in the city. Of course, these numbers are apt to change. 777 of the patients, 98%, had underlying conditions. In Italy, over 99% of coronavirus patients had other health problems. The average age was 79 years old. Wow. So I want to be clear about that. That still looks, if you look at 100,000, that looks like a lot. Obviously, it is a lot. They also talked about the guy who created this imperial study, Ferguson, said, well, really, if you look at these deaths, 2/3 of them are actually from people who would have died within the next several months to a year anyway. Meaning not just pre-existing conditions, but stage 4 lung cancer, emphysema, right? Serious respiratory illnesses, and this accelerated it. Not saying that we shouldn't help them, unlike Italy, who says you're on your own. That being said, that does change how we deal with this as a society when you understand that only 1% in Italy were younger than the age of 70 and healthy. And in New York, 2% were young and healthy. The death rate is very, very different, and we are still treating everybody out there as though they are part of this 98% demographic of people over the age of 79 with serious pre-existing conditions. So even if you look at that 100,000 number, you're looking at possibly 90 to 98,000 people who were going to pass away within the next couple of months to a year anyway, and it was accelerated by coronavirus. Now, what's important about that is I'm not saying this is insignificant, but those same people who were going to die anyway, who maybe have cancer, who maybe have emphysema, would also die if they got some sort of serious pneumonia or flu. That would accelerate it as well. So take that number, 100,000, and based on all the data that we have, 2,000 would be people who are young and or healthy.
Yeah, so it is a very different picture if somebody only has a coronavirus and dies, or if it's just the final straw, just the straw that breaks the camel's back. And you can't deal with those things. But that's not how it's being reported at all.
No.
Nobody's talking about it.
It's not how it's being reported. And here's the reason it bothers me so much is let's follow the sequence of events, okay?
Right.
Rachel Maddow says, don't air the Trump press briefing. So does Salon, so does Slate, so does HuffPo. So MSNBC doesn't do it. Then CNN says, we're not going to run the press briefings. So they don't run the press briefings. In those press briefings, Donald Trump says, hey, the FDA just approved a drug, these therapeutics that have had a really high rate of efficacy. We are creating hundreds of thousands of masks and able to sanitize hundreds of thousands more. This is the silver lining right now. Look at all these Americans who are coming together without having to be coerced, by the way. What's happening? We're bringing up a clip. Without having to be coerced, by the way. That's not broadcast. But then they pull a snippet from the press briefing that they didn't run saying 100,000 to 220,000 Americans are going to die, again without context that 98% of the ones in New York City were with pre-existing conditions. That's that timeline. And you tell me that the media has your best interests at heart, and this isn't just about, doesn't mean that the information is not accurate, okay? I want to be clear about this. Yeah, okay, we had, I want to make sure I have the numbers right, 790 deaths at the time of when we were doing this fact-checking in the morning. 790 deaths in the city of New York City. In New York City. I know that was redundant. Okay, that's true. That is true. But context does matter when 98% of them involved old people or people with pre-existing conditions. That is also true. So when you choose to only pick a fact that is a total number without context, and you choose to not broadcast the fact that we have new therapeutics, that we have more masks, that we've made advancements with antibodies, that tells me that you are not looking to provide just the facts.
Yeah.
And that's what bothers me.
Yeah, it's an illustration of what we've talked about for a long time. The news media doesn't necessarily care about reporting the facts. It cares about rustling up this narrative to make sure that they can use it for their own political well-being or their own ideological concerns. Yeah, it's serious business.
Well, data like that shows us, like what you said, we know who the people that are at risk are.
Right.
People that are older and have pre-consisting illnesses.
Yeah.
So why don't we take them and we focus on them?
You're
and try
stealing
to put
my
them off to the
idea.
side?
That was my idea.
I pointed at you and I said you said it
Well,
before.
you know what? The reason that you're willing to say it now is because I told you this might be a career ender. Remember I came to you, I said, guys, no one else is saying this. This is several weeks ago. I said, no one else is saying this? But, okay, first off, this part doesn't go public. I freaking hate old people. So
they smell funny.
It's true.
No, they smell like old library books. No, I said, why are we talking about essential businesses that can stay open?
Right.
Why aren't we talking about non-essential businesses that could adapt or modify their workflow? And why are we telling everyone to quarantine instead of simply quarantining old people and people at risk? And another thing, people don't necessarily know who to trust. When they came out, the CDC, and said, you shouldn't be wearing masks.
Right.
Well, hold on a second. You also praised South Korea. It's Mask City. You can't find them without a mask. You could not pick a mugger, a pickpocketer, I don't know what they call them there in South Korea, out of a police lineup because they're all the same height, same hair, same eye color, and then a mask. Really, the only way I can tell the difference is by the lip, by the cleft. And I can't see that. There's no, but they all mugged me. I was visiting in Seoul. They all mugged me, officer. They coughed on me, and I gave them my wife's purse. So they all wear masks. Now the CDC, I think we can bring this up. Now they're saying they're considering an order of putting on masks. Now, a mask is not 100% effective. Neither is an N95 respirator. And then you go lower than that, a surgical mask. No, it's not. You know what else? People were saying, well, don't try and make masks at home, right? With T-shirts or with whatever fabrics you have. They're saying that's not going to work. Except I looked online and said, well, I don't know, maybe there is a way to make a mask at home. Turns out the most effective masks, and by the way, you can go to Origins of Maine. They have masks, and here we'll bring Brendan in a little bit. He has to wear a mask all day. There are a lot of companies making great masks. But I searched how to make an at-home mask that might, at the very least, be passable, provide some benefit. And the study came back saying that actually a T-shirt, multi blend, like poly cotton blend, I guess helps, and it was more effective than a plain cotton T-shirt, or an antimicrobial pillow were about 70-something% effective at filtration and almost entirely effective at blocking droplets.
So learning how to do the ninja
But guess where I found that? The CDC or FDA. I was looking, these were the guidelines that conducted these studies. And now saying, no, don't wear a mask, because at the time it wasn't about whether they work, it was about shortages for healthcare workers. And by the way, if masks don't work at all, why do healthcare workers need them so much? I understand they need them more, and we should get them the masks first because they're dealing in close proximity with people who have the coronavirus. But guess what? We're now talking about people who are carriers who don't know that they're carriers. Let's put everyone in masks.
Yeah, but they don't. Yeah, they don't think that you can handle that information, so they have to lie to you and say that they don't work. Yeah, they don't think that you can actually discern that, okay, well, I shouldn't buy it, but maybe somebody else should.
I think every single citizen of the United States who's walking out there should look like they've just left Arkham Asylum or our Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. They should all be wearing masks. There's no reason not to. Hey, look, there's a mask on CNN. Let's see what they're doing and fact check it real quick.
It's awe-inspiring, considering the fact that they, too, could be putting themselves in harm's way.
Is she broadcasting from a war zone? Where's Geraldo Rivera? This is another thing. Some hospitals are seeing surges. What they don't tell you is that some hospitals are seeing surges because everyone wants to be tested for coronavirus right now. The surge does not mean that everyone is in intensive care. Some people are, and that's why it's really important that you don't go to the emergency room if you have some mild symptoms. there's not much they can do for you right now. Don't overload the system. All right, I think we actually have traffic report, right?
Do.
With Thomas Finnegan. Let's do this. We know that many of you are stuck at home, but we still want to assist you make your day as convenient and passable as possible. It's time to go to the traffic report with Thomas Finnegan. All right, Mr. Finnegan, are you there, sir?
I am here. How are you, Stephen?
I am doing well. Mr. Finnegan, what do we have this morning? What should people look out for on their morning commute?
Well, this morning there's some light congestion in the kitchen as you make your approach to the coffee pot, so be on the lookout for that. Yeah. And someone left the AC on last night, so be sure to bundle up if you're coming in from the bedroom.
I appreciate that, Thomas Finnegan. Keep us abreast. If anything develops, this has been Morning Traffic Report with Thomas Finnegan. All right, and let us know if there's anyone in chat. Send your chats to us with a screen name so that we can actually hear from you and I can read it aloud on air. Do we have anyone?
Yeah, we do.
Oh,
we do
okay,
have a
good.
chat. One from Andrew.
I just assumed no one was watching.
Oh, they are. So we have one from Andrew. He says, "Thanks for keeping us entertained. Renewed my subscription at the beginning of March."
Thank you very much, Andrew. We appreciate
that. To have you on board.
Thank
you. I think we do have others here. Yeah. Let's see. Nathan says, talk about the ridiculous release of rapists in Rochester, New York. I haven't heard about this.
I've not heard that. I've heard people proposing it.
Yeah, I live here, and it's disgusting. Mayor Lovely Warren and the Democratic leadership here are ruining the area.
I don't know that that's happened yet.
Yeah,
I know it was proposed.
I don't know, Nathan.
So I don't want to speak out of turn here, and I think that I can hedge my words and safely say that releasing rapists during a pandemic seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, talk about rape culture.
I wouldn't put my John Hancock on that bill. Because someone else is going to be putting their John Hancock through your window. I don't want rapists released. I don't understand this at all. And this comes again from the ism, if you believe that it's a prison industrial complex and that prison should only be about rehabilitation and not punishment. You know what? I believe it's split the difference, okay? I think that prison should be as uncomfortable as legally possible, and hopefully we can rehabilitate all of these people. I don't want it to be like Sweden, where you commit some kind of a serious violent crime and you effectively get put in an IKEA display case, okay?
Yeah, right.
I don't want that. I don't want you going to prison where you have more than most people in Manhattan in their junior suite apartment. I think we need to balance punishing people as a deterrent and rehabilitating people. But then again, that's my worldview as a conservative. So it does dictate that releasing serial rapists into the small town of Rochester, New York, sounds like it could come with some complications. I don't know. I'm not a rape doctor.
We do have another chat here from Quirky Blue 9.
Okay.
It says, had this remark show up in my Facebook feed, and I'd love to know how you would respond. They were remarking on Trump's comment that the U.S. wasn't built to shut down. Basically, they were calling capitalism bad because it can't shut down even in a crisis to take care of people.
That's bad? That's what people are saying?
I guess, yeah.
All of a sudden, can't stop, won't stop became a demotivational slogan?
Yeah, what?
Right.
Like the fact that the train keeps on choo-choo. I think I can. What would these people prefer? I fucked up. What do they want it to be? This is what's remarkable to me. Shouldn't we all be rooting for the country right now to come back? Shouldn't we all be, in other words, if you have a negative story amidst a pandemic and you have a success story, like private industry stepping up and creating masks, or now that we have the ability to create testing kits. First it went down to 5 minutes, then it went down to 2 minutes with these private laboratories. Was it Abbott? And I don't know the other laboratory. We talked about them yesterday. And they don't have to stick an iron rod in the back of your skull like it's some sort of a lesson being learned from Kevin Spacey in Seven. That's a good thing. That's a wonderful thing. If we have to pick between that and, well, you know what? More people in New York aren't having access to ventilators. Listen, that's terrible. But we should also really make sure that we highlight the hope.
Yeah, when it goes back to the left calling all of that false hope.
Right.
So if Trump is not saying 100% negative things, if he's including things like, hey, there's actually some promise here in the private industry, then that is false hope.
Yeah.
No, it's actually hope. It's actually a way out of this whole thing.
But
and
if he was saying negative things, they'd just say he's fear mongering.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. False hope would be there is no coronavirus. Okay, it's fake news.
We're all good.
False hope is not Americans will come together and fight this enemy and show our strength and resolve. And industries have stepped up without the need of the Defense Production Act. Without that, they've stepped up and they're making hundreds of thousands of masks and making the capabilities to sanitize hundreds of thousands more. That's not false hope. You guys were asking for masks. Now you're getting masks. And they're now recyclable.
Yeah.
Wow. When did that go out the window as something relevant, AOC? Recyclable masks. If there's ever anything that should make you borderline climax in your government chair amidst a hearing, it should be masks that can now be sanitized and recycled 20 times that were single use. It's a lot more complicated to make than a straw.
Yeah, so the message is clear. You're not allowed to be happy.
Right.
Correct.
You are not only allowed to be happy, you're not allowed to broadcast. We want to, this is really what it comes down to. They want to shut down the briefings because the briefings include, keep in mind, the death figures that you're hearing about now, that came from President Trump's briefing, folks. Mm-hmm. He brought the doctor out. So people give him crap. Why did he bring out the MyPillow guy? You know why? Because the MyPillow guy retooled 75% of his factory so that he'll be able to do 50,000 masks a day. That's an American success story. That's good. Yeah. And then he brings someone out to say, hey, the death rate could be 100 to 200,000 people. The information that you are getting today in the news was from Donald Trump's briefing. Yeah. He's not only going out and spouting good news. He's going out and telling the truth. And the reason they don't want to broadcast it is because they want to pull the bad news without the context of the good news. And that is what bothers me. It's the lies by omission that are so toxic. Also toxic, the Cuomo brothers. I would just... I mean,
the nipple rings? Like, dude.
They have nipple rings?
You didn't see the picture?
Is that how he got corona?
Can you bring that up?
Can we bring that up? Cuomo has a nipple ring?
I think they're bars.
Which one?
Nipple bars, sorry.
It's the governor? Governor Cuomo? Yeah,
the governor?
Yeah.
I would have thought it was Chris.
I know.
He seems like the nipple ring kind of guy.
No, it's the governor. He's a freak.
What's the term of the one in the tip of the willy?
What's Prince something?
Prince? I'm not one to say. I don't know.
I just call it. I call it the ascot.
The Joe Exotic had one.
That's right. He had one. He used to put a little lock on it. Can we see? I had no idea that Cuomo had nipple rings.
Oh yeah, you got to bring that up.
But he does have coronavirus.
Oh.
So we're including the good news with the bad. Good news being nipple rings. It's all bad. Let's be honest. It's all bad. There's no positive in this press briefer. Cuomo has coronavirus and nipple rings.
Yeah.
This is the worst thing that's ever happened to this show. All right, let me know when you have it, and you can bring it up. So let's move on to the next point here that I think is pretty important. I think we already told people about the notification bell.
We do have the nipple ring picture.
Oh, let me see the nipple ring picture. There we go.
So here he is. We can scroll down a little bit. He's got.
Right there.
Well, that may not be nipple rings. He may have
a straight line.
He may have pulled out nipple hair.
Yeah.
And it has those little like goose bumps around his nipples.
Sides?
Whatever the case is, the message is clear. Governor Cuomo has weird nipples.
Well, you know what? I really hope that he doesn't hang around with his brother because that would be a pre-existing condition. That would put him at risk. I mean, because I would imagine the coronavirus can enter through the nipple way. There's a lot of capillary circulation there. The next thing that I want to get to here is I want to talk about the stimulus bill. Because I think this matters. I think a lot of people have skimmed over it, and this is the biggest spending bill in American history, bar none. So I think it deserves a little bit of attention, and there are some pros, there are some cons, and I think that the media has been pretty irresponsible in not covering all the above. Let's go to clip C, please.
What did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American history. Shameful. The greed of that fight is wrong.
Okay. So a couple of fast facts here. Every single Senate Democrat, including the person AOC endorsed for President, Bernie Sanders, signed on. They voted for the bill. They voted for the bill. So let's be clear about that. It's going to cost a whole lot. And I think there's something that's lost in this when we're talking about the stimulus bill. There's some good things here, okay? I think it's small businesses. They're going to have forgivable loans for up to $10 million. The qualifications, we don't exactly understand what they are right now. And let me know if you're chatting right there, if you're a small business owner, how you've been affected economically from this. And all we can really do for you guys is try to offer this as close to cost as possible. Enter promo code QUARANTINE, and you get $30 off. But I think that this stimulus bill, unfortunately, and I know I might lose some of the Trump cultists here, I think I've been pretty fair, is not targeted enough. I know that you're more of a libertarian, and so am I, Wade. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that it is appropriate for the government to provide some kind of restitution for businesses that they effectively have shut down.
Yeah, well, so the Fed has basically set itself up as the lender of last resort.
Right.
And we can't act like, they can't not be the lender of last resort if they've already set themselves up that way. Right. I don't think the Fed should exist, but this is not the time to, like, the Fed may very well end after this, but it's we're this is the solution and the pattern of solutions that have been set up since Wilson.
Right, but I do think at this point, for example, the owner of the restaurant down the block, when the government steps up and says, nobody go to restaurants, shut down your doors, effectively, it's like a mobster coming in and knocking tables over, saying no more restaurant. I do think that it is far more appropriate, and the argument can be made, and I would agree with that argument, that it is the government's job to try and alleviate what ails that business because it was brought on by government.
Right. Yeah, well, the sort of bailout model is the model that we've been using, again, for 100 years. Right. So, right or wrong, this is the way things have basically
Well, not necessarily. It's different. For example, so this is not something that was created by years of bad policy. So if you look at the crash, right, of 2008, and you look at Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and you look at, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank is banking. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, I believe, is the housing. Sometimes Barney Frank was running a brothel in the basement. That's the real main takeaway. But that was created why? And a lot of people don't understand this, too. They just go, subprime loaning, predatory lenders. This is something that's really silly. And I'm going to come back around to the current stimulus bill. Predatory lending is such a silly term to me.
Yeah.
Because that assumes that a bank is going, hey, all right, Mr. Chase, I got a business model for you. Oh, all right, I'm listening, Johnson. You know how we lend money to people? And, we make sure we charge interest in the money when they lend them and they pay it back with interest, so that's how we make money. Yeah, and we have a very lengthy pre-screening process to make sure that they're the right candidates who can pay these loans back, because that's how we make money in the interest. Okay. So picture this. We lend the money at lower interest than normal to people who are never going to pay it back. They have no chance of paying it back. Johnson, I like it. This is why you're vice president of communications relations. Think about that. Predatory lending. It doesn't make any sense unless the loans were not only guaranteed and underwritten by the government, but were thrust upon the banks. Why? Why? Because of wokeness. Because of ensuring equal outcomes. It was, you need to lend these subprime loans to people who cannot afford these homes. In other words, the standard was, I think, 20 to 30% down. I don't know what the interest rate was right before the crash. They said, we're gonna lower it to sometimes almost nothing down. 5%, 8%, 10% down, and less interest, to make sure that not only minorities, they tried to couch it as though this was created for minorities, but it wasn't. It was created for people who had not purchased homes before and had no business living in these homes at these prices. The government created that bubble, forced banks to take part. Then, of course, there was money on the table, so banks got greedy. They took advantage of it, and they packaged these all up together to try and minimize risk. That didn't work. And then we ended up with the housing crash, and then the government steps in to bail out the banks. That is wrong on so many levels. And that happened over the course of years. You could argue really decades. This happened over the course of a month, and the government stepped in and said, hey, owner of the Dunkin' Donuts franchise over there on Willow Creek Way, you're going to shut down because we need to prevent infection. I think the banks, right, Goldman Sachs, Bear Stearns, all of those, 2000, they shouldn't have been bailed out. I don't think that anyone is too big to fail. I think that's different from these companies here who have been shut down within a span of a month, not because of decades of bad policy. And those business owners, these small business owners, did not abuse the system to create any ill-gotten gain. The banks did.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that's important to delineate, and that's the problem I have with this stimulus bill. Like we said, there's a lot that's going to small businesses. That's great. But airlines, they're going to be receiving $58 billion, right? $29 billion in grants, $29 billion in loans and guarantees, as well as some reprieves from taxes. This is unreal to me because the airlines are going to be there a couple years from now with their handout anyway. They always are. And I understand also it's really hard to make money in the airline industry. Why? Because of energy costs, because of all the new regulations that they create. And you do have some people at the airlines are greedy. The fact that only Spirit, Spirit charges you more for a carry-on, right? They're the only one that charges you. It's basically, it's the Greyhound bus / WNBA of the sky, Spirit. Don't fly Spirit unless someone's dead. Okay? So, like,
last resort.
Yes. Like I always tell people, don't call me after 10:30 unless someone is dead. Do not show up on the tarmac in an airplane marked Spirit unless you are in a Corona hotbed and it's Escape from New York and you have an eye patch. I don't want to see that logo anywhere near me because it's probably a bunch of rapists who've been left out from Rochester.
Yeah. So the airlines are the 90-year-old who gets coronavirus.
Effectively. That's a great analogy, Audio Wade.
Why, thank you.
I don't think that the airline should get any bailouts.
Sure.
I don't think they should at all. I don't think that
selection.
automotive should. And here's the thing that people don't think about, too. They go, well, if we don't have the airlines, people won't be able to travel. That's not true. Because guess what? There will be an airline who won't need a bailout, probably a company like Southwest or JetBlue. Hey, maybe remember everyone loved flying Virgin when Virgin went away? Even though I know Richard Branson is a kind of a weird guy. You know, he does the ayahuasca in a hot air balloon. But still, Virgin Airlines, everyone talked about how it was like a party in the sky. It had that weird LED lighting. It came with a complimentary snack. People loved Virgin. This is Branson, right? Richard Branson.
Yeah.
He has more money than almost anybody. I mean, Jeff Bezos sees his fortune and thinks it's cute. But this guy has so much money and Virgin Airlines couldn't compete. Why? Because you cannot compete against American, against Delta, against United. I don't know, they probably all merged at some point now because my points don't really make sense anymore. And I want to get a free ticket. Can I get a free cocktail, Delta? Can I get a free cocktail? The point is, even Richard Branson couldn't compete against the airlines with a never-ending supply of federal funding. How many big new banks come out lately? Not a whole lot. How do you compete with Goldman Sachs when every time they screw up, the government steps in and bails them out? This prohibits new companies from stepping in and creating competition. And if we didn't give any money to the airlines right now, we might see a Virgin step up. We might see Southwest create more flights. We may see Jeff Blue actually too. He's a great pilot, by the way.
Like Jeff.
Great pilot, underpaid, loves to drink though. But JetBlue fly from somewhere other than
bit of a lush
LaGuardia and in Baltimore. And they have very limited flights. And every time I've flown JetBlue, it's been a delight. But I can't fly if I don't live on the East Coast.
But they don't have to innovate.
What I'm saying is natural selection. It cuts out the ones that can't sustain themselves. And the buyouts just keep them up until, if you cut them out, you'd have other ones that build up on their own and then can sustain.
Right. And that's the issue. And this bailout bill lumps all of these people together, people who would never even consider, want, and pridefully would probably refuse any bailout money. Keep in mind, too, Ford did that with the bailouts. Ford declined, and the government made them take the bailout.
Wow.
I don't know exactly why that is. Maybe we can have some research about it. I think it had something to do with equalizing the markets. I'm not entirely sure. But Ford didn't want, initially they refused the bailout money because they're not as crappy as GM. And I know there'll be some people here who say like, oh, GM, someone once said to me, you know what Ford stands for? Found on road dead. You drive a Cavalier. Okay? You drive a Metro Geo. It's the opposite of a chickmobile. People leave your general direction to have sex with a stranger just so they don't have to look at you when you're driving in a Geo.
Yeah, well, the whole bailout is based on the idea that the government knows what to do with your money better than you do.
Right.
And I know it's a platitude at this point, but it can't. The government cannot make these decisions and cannot be as targeted as consumers, as people who actually want the product.
But the problem is, right now we have artificially manipulated the market and supply and demand because we've told consumers that they cannot consume, and I don't think that that's very prudent. And I don't know what kind of ramifications this will have long term for businesses. Speaking of which, ramifications, I think actually we need to bring in one of our workers here. You know him, you love him. He climbs poles in the office. You've seen him. Even Brendan, who we have to have somewhat quarantined here. He's not showing signs. He could be asymptomatic. But it's been a problem in this office. We've had our own. We are not unaffected from the corona scare. Is Brendan there? Brendan, do come in. Hold on a second. Hold on. Wait. Whoa. Is it 6 feet? It's Brendan?
Yeah, that's the federally... Yeah.
Brendan, grab it. Do you want me to grab it? Yeah, grab it and tell me how far it is. Let's see, how far is this... Well,
I got the side that doesn't read anything.
Oh, okay, hold on a second. Let me see.
That's got to be at least 8 feet.
Yep, okay, that's 8 feet. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Keep it. We'll sanitize it afterwards.
I set the chair far enough away so it's 7 feet away.
Is it far enough away?
You should be safe.
All right. Wow. So, Brendan, tell me here. Brendan has been usually pretty responsive. Just had the knee surgery. You're feeling better, right?
Yeah, I'm walking.
Good for you. You're making progress. Of course, you were. Where are your surgery? He was supposed to have surgical gloves.
Oh, no.
No. Dude, we got to.
Brendan, hold up your hands here in front of the microphone. I don't want to ruin the microphone.
That's a good idea.
No, not in front of.
Yeah.
I don't want. Hold them closer to me. Hold your. Yeah, there. Okay. Hold on a second. I'll make sure I got this right. There you go. It's Everclear.
Smart.
So, what happened exactly? Because you were not at any risk of coronavirus. Our agreement, the reason we're able to serve you for MugClub Quarantine Month, that's the hashtag, is we all agreed we will only quarantine at home and in the office. And since it's broken apart, we never have more than 8 people in any room at any given time. And then Brendan happened. Explain the situation a little bit, because we were all very vexed.
Well, so my parents had scheduled to come down in March, months ahead of time.
Right.
Before all that happened.
And the problem was they were non-refundable tickets.
Well, no, they were driving.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's different, yeah.
Well, yeah, they're going to drive down and because they drove down the March before, so it's kind of like a tradition thing.
One could argue it's almost different from last March.
Yeah. Well, then I started seeing that everything was being locked down, and I'm like, hey, maybe you guys should reconsider. Cause there's
pandemic.
Yeah, there's that. And we probably wouldn't be able to do much. We wouldn't be able to go out.
Did you use the word pandemic?
No.
Oh, well, that was your mistake.
Okay.
So they were a little confused. Okay. So they were driving.
Yeah.
And then they did move it though, right?
Yeah, no, I texted them like, hey, maybe you should reconsider. And they're like, yeah, now that we see that your work is kind of concerned about it and people are locking down everything, maybe it's a good time to
it's global.
Postpone it.
Yeah, and so they postponed it.
They postponed it a couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, a couple of weeks. They postponed it to closer to peak.
Yeah.
Well, no, then the 2 days later they said weather looks pretty good, we're going to come down.
Yeah. See, the issue here is weather was not the delineating factor. That wasn't our primary concern.
Right.
With your.
To be fair, the weather was great, though.
The weather was fantastic.
It was really nice.
It was very
really nice.
Yeah, I get it. I understand why they would want to why they would want to come down here, but I also don't know that weather is enough of a justification for stopping at every motel and Valero gas station through the country.
I don't know. It was pretty good weather though.
Yes, it was pretty good weather.
Top-notch weather.
So then I was pretty cavalier. Remember, you said hey, can they come into the studio?
Yeah.
Because they're from a pretty rural area.
And that was my idea. They were just coming down to see me. I just thought it would be good to see the studio.
Well, it wasn't, because I didn't think about it, and I was like, well, they live in a rural area. You had to drive an hour growing up to find a Chick-fil-A, right?
Yeah.
Are you sure that there's only a Chick-fil-A 1 hour from you? Have you Google Mapped it recently?
No, but I mean, it was just whenever we went to Milwaukee, that was
Okay, so you go to Milwaukee for So you would go to Milwaukee, wonderful city, by the way, a lot going on.
Really?
Yeah.
For Chick-fil-A. So did you just stop? Did you drive to the truck stop outside of Milwaukee, exit 194 from Milwaukee?
Yeah.
No.
So you went to downtown Milwaukee for a Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Got to get those sweet nuggets.
Okay, so then they did travel, and I was cavalier about it. Remember, I said, you know me, I'm kind of a guilty employer. I'm always like, okay, sure. And I like it. I love Brendan, and I wanted to meet his family. And then I went home, and I explained this to my wife, and she said, are you out of your mind?
I noticed a change the next day. I was like, maybe I shouldn't press for this.
Well, what happened is I said, fine. And then my wife said, well, the issue is, my mother, who's our wardrobe stylist, she doesn't have coronavirus, but she does have pneumonia right now. So that is something which she hasn't been here. Hi, Mom. We've kept her working from home, and she has the costumes delivered to someone to go pick it up. So we don't want her in the office. So that was my concern. Right. And then my wife was the one who said, well, it's not really that they come from a rural area. It's that they'd be stopping at all these different locations. And I believe she said that if they deemed it appropriate to drive up in a pandemic, that she wasn't entirely confident that they had hand sanitizer in the car.
I get it. You just hate farm people. It's fine.
That's pretty much what it is. It's the calluses and the cuticles. And then, though, I spoke with half-Asian Bill Richmond because I said, well, you know what, I feel bad because I gave Brendan the green light, and then Hillary thinks it's a bad idea. And then Bill brought up a valid point.
Oh, I didn't know Bill was involved in this, too.
Yeah, Bill brought up a valid point. He said, I don't think it matters. You know the way Bill is.
I didn't realize how high up this
I said, what do you mean? I asked him, I said, I'm concerned. I said, because I don't want to go back on my word, and but I understood the concern, and Bill said, well, where is parents staying? I said, that's a good question.
Yeah.
In your 1-bedroom apartment.
Well, no. It was if they get kicked out of the campsite that they're staying at.
Right. Were they?
No.
The campground was open.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were in your house because they dropped off beer and an AR-15.
Oh, yeah.
That's true. So
you were infected, man.
So he shows up. All I have is a picture of a case of beer and an AR-15 at his house.
It's worth
and
the
by
risk.
the way, it wasn't even in panorama view, the picture, and I could see the entire apartment.
It's a cool gun, though.
It is a very
really nice.
cool
Yeah.
gun.
Scope on it is really cool.
But effectively,
really
you
cool
were
gun.
in an incubator.
Well,
And here's the thing, I've always said, Brendan, I truly believe, I'm not just saying this.
I'm
Yeah.
starting to see,
I'm not just saying this. I truly believe that if we were to do IQ tests, Brendan probably has the highest IQ of anyone in this
Oh,
audience.
he's really, yeah.
I really do think that's the case. But what were you thinking?
Well, and I'll like my parents are usually like really smart too. Like
Right.
Like this is very uncharacteristic.
I imagine you're from good stock.
Like like I'm not trying to like throw them under the bus or anything.
No,
but
of course not.
Yeah, I don't know.
But they have the news, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Well, hold on,
Yeah.
Bruce. What do you think here is going on here with Brendan there, Bruce Lee? Brendan, I have a question for you.
Yes, Bruce.
Are you retarded? That's not nice language. He doesn't
Bruce.
understand. He comes from a place where we're allowed. We're not allowed to use that language here, Bruce. So, what would you like to say? Oh, you looked like you were about to raise your hand.
No.
To say something. What were you going? Well, hold on. You know what? Raise it anyway. Do you have a question?
No.
What would you like to say to your parents in closing? Because you were concerned that they would feel we're not mocking the parents, but I'm kind of sad because I would have liked to meet your parents.
Right. Yeah.
But I just don't want them, to cough blood on me.
Right. Like contagion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do I want to say to them?
Yeah. What do you want to say to them? Because they're going to see this now, and you threw them under the bus.
I'm sorry for making it overcomplicated.
Yeah.
By adding the extra variable of being in the studio.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe we could have them call in and apologize to you for putting you in that situation because this is what he has to do now.
Yeah, it's honestly that's not cool.
This is what he has to do. We can't touch, but we can fist pound.
Let's touch.
No. We have it. We're supposed to have that. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, there we go. That was really ill timed. Get out. That's enough, Brendan. Oh shoot! I hit the microphone. It's ever clear. It is ever clear. Thank you. Sanitize. Put that in a mask. Put it on the steam cycle in the laundry. That measuring tape.
We love you, Brendan.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we've already gone over time. Let me go really quickly. Let's go on to the story number 3. We'll take some. If you have some chat, let me know because I cannot see the chat here today.
Yeah.
By the way, this also works. This is another thing the CDC said: don't try and use vodka or any homemade liquor for sanitizer. And they included Everclear in there. Everclear is 190 proof, okay? Then I read at the bottom of that article, it says, I guess Everclear could work, but if you want to waste some money, just buy hand sanitizer. No, hold on a second. This is cheaper than hand sanitizer. I have to dilute it down to 70%. I didn't ask you to manage my home finances. I wanted to know if Everclear would work. I'm stocked up so I can say this now. A lot of times people ask me my favorite cigar. You'll never know because there's such a low supply of cigars. I don't want you to steal my favorite cigar. You'll know cigars that I like, but you won't know my favorite cigar. Why? Because there are some things that I keep for me. I give so much.
Yeah.
I give the discount. Do you have any idea what it's like to do 2 shows a day? It's actually pretty fun. I really do appreciate it. But
I was just going to say, well, speaking of favorites, Ann Arbor Alex asks, what type of roast are you drinking? So what kind of coffee?
So this actually, we just did some coffee commercials. So this, I believe, is it's either this, the vintage roast. That is my favorite overall roast. Here's what I will say about Black Rifle Coffee. And blackriflecoffee.com/Crowder, you get 20% off. They're actually doing, maybe we can bring this up, Gibbon. They sent out an email. Let me bring this up right now. This is the beauty of it being live.
Use the promo code Crowder.
Use the promo code Crowder. You get 20% off. But they're doing a lot of good work here for veterans. Let me find this right now in this. Okay, here you go. Black Rifle Coffee, they are donating more than 12,000 bags of coffee along with Black Rifle Coffee canned coffee and other coffee-related products to first responders and service members. So, or during a 10-day period, they'll be donating a bag, I think, for everything you buy. I don't know the exact promo code. This doesn't have to do with us. The promo code is Crowder, but I do know that right now they are donating coffee to service members and need use the promo code Crowder, blackriflecoffee.com/Crowder. I will say this. We wouldn't have a sponsor if we didn't like it. And I've talked about this before, Black Rifle Coffee. I hated their coffee at one point.
Really? Huh.
They came by for a sponsorship, and I said no.
Early
but I have
on,
to explain this. I bought their coffee at a gun store. So I had seen their advertising that said fresh roasted to deliver.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, fresh roasted. And I drank it and I said, that's just not good coffee. It's stale.
Yeah.
Turned out this was
sitting
I spoke with the Black Rifle owners and they're like, oh, that's at a guns. We actually don't distribute to them anymore because they weren't even following the rules.
Oh, yeah.
And they were keeping leftover old stock.
Oh, that's a shame.
I said, okay, so let me try them. And this is fantastic. This is my favorite overall roast. It's great for an espresso machine, especially if an automatic. I love the gunship roast for any kind of pour over or drip machine. And then the AK-47 espresso blend is great as well. But I'm not a dark roast guy, whereas Dr. Choi, my Korean doctor, is.
Yeah.
Story number, do you have another thing?
I was going to say, someone else says, if we all become zombies, that wouldn't be a bad thing. When's the last time you saw a zombie have to wash their hands or save up on some non-perishables?
Well, I don't know if they, there's no skin on the hand.
Therefore, no skin in the game.
No skin in the game. And I don't know if you need to wash bone. How long does it live? Like Corona lives on steel for a long period of time. It lives on cardboard for 48 hours, I know. That's why
zombies
sanitize
are our superiors.
They do have an advantage because they're undead.
The next level.
Story number 3, I think we should get to this because no one else is covering this. We've talked a lot about coronavirus. Joe Biden could be a rapist. So, the woman claimed that Biden... Here's the thing. This is important to note because when the media went nuts over Donald Trump, and we'll get to the comparison of Brett Kavanaugh, by the way, the media went nuts over Donald Trump, what he was saying was, when you're famous, women will they want anything from you. They'll let you do anything. You can grab him by the... And not a horrible thing to say, but he was trying to create a scenario saying, like, you can get away with anything.
You were saying it is a horrible thing to say.
Yes. I am saying it's a horrible thing to say.
Yes. They let you.
But he's saying they let you, which honestly, I'm amazed that he couched that horrible phrase with consent. Like, I'm amazed. Like, he had the forethought. He's playing 9-dimensional chess.
In 2005 or
they
whatever.
let you grab by the pussy. I said, first part, big, operative words. They let you grab by the pussy. It's like, okay. And I don't even know how you do. Is it a fish hook? Is it a cup? Anyway, the point is, he was talking about doing something that was consensual, not sexual assault. And I will say, frankly, not too far off from what happens with my wife and I on date night, okay? Keyword being, let you. I might grab her. I'm not saying there, but I might grab a handful of wherever.
What's available?
What's available? You grab anything. Yeah. I like all of it. I like grabbing my wife. Some might
say that's a good thing.
I enjoy relations with my wife. My point here is, and she's watching. Hi, mom-in-law. The man claimed that Biden cornered her and penetrated her without consent in 1993. Now, of course, this is. I think that you shouldn't just believe everyone all the time. I do think that due process needs, obviously, just like we've said with Kavanaugh. And unfortunately, there was due process, and we found out that it was it was liar, whore, and you know it. I believe that was the conclusion
on the record
from a jury of the peers, even though there was no jury nor peers. It was just a soundboard with Robert De Niro. But the left has not been playing by their rules. So let's compare right now this stuff happening with Biden. And I don't know whether it's credible or not, but considering that he's running for president and how we had, again, that grab him by the vagina, playing like a loop, like a morphine drip, just like right now, the 100,000 deaths, they should at least give some airtime to someone who's, I was raped.
Right, you'd think.
I didn't ask him to grab me by the P word in a hypothetical scenario to which he obliged, which really would be the Donald Trump scenario. It's this man, he raped me, and no coverage. Let's compare that to Brett Kavanaugh, where, by the way, we know that none of these things could be corroborated, right? We know that half of the people who came forward with stories, particularly the gang rape stories, recanted them, saying, I just wanted to get on TV. And Christine Blasey Ford then raised several $million on a GoFundMe, and she was presenting different stories to the psychologist and to the authorities that didn't match up with people who weren't there, who were not witnesses from places that don't even exist. So let's be clear about Blasey Ford. Here we go. The media, Washington Post, they mentioned Ford, Christine Blasey Ford, Dr. Christie, 100 times.
Wow.
Right, and Reid, Mrs. Reid is the one who's accused Joe Biden. 0.
Yeah.
New York Times, Ford, 90 times. Anyone want to guess the references to Reid, the woman who alleges that Joe Biden raped her?
7?
0.
Oh. Right. That's what I was going to guess.
By the way, I should say, actually, I have this here. It's 100 plus.
Oh.
100 plus at
yikes.
Ford. Okay. So it's like 20,000 deaths or much less from the Imperial study. I'm getting a little loose because I figure, though, I don't have that much time with the morning show to look up every single reference.
Right.
I know it's at least 100. MSNBC reference Christine Blasey Ford 100 plus times. Read 0. So we've just gone through. Now keep in mind, Washington Post is used as one of the reputable fact checkers for YouTube and Twitter. Right? They were the ones who were using. Is Washington Post the truth meter or the Pinocchios?
I don't
remember. I think Washington Post is Pinocchios. Snopes is a truth meter.
I thought Snopes was the Pinocchio.
There's Truth Reader, Pinocchios, Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire. They all try to get cute. They're the Gene Shalit of fact checkers.
Stop it.
So Washington Post gets to dictate. This is another thing people don't understand. The algorithm on YouTube and Twitter, by the way, the algorithms that determined, I think it was Laura Ingram's tweet regarding the Chinese coronavirus, the masks not working, removed.
Gosh.
There were videos that were suppressed touting chloroquine on YouTube and on Twitter because they were saying it's fake news.
Right.
Now, do those people get that back, by the way, now that it's been approved by the FDA, now that they've actually had to recall these masks? So keep in mind, these algorithms that remove those tweets, that suppress those videos, that when you put up a video talking about, as we did this, you can go back and watch it. We talked about the combination of chloroquine last week, I believe.
Yes.
Last week, and a link on that video was, did you want to be redirected to this? It wasn't even Wikipedia. It was some kind of COVID reference page. And we could see that this video was not showing up as browse or suggested. Well, guess what? That could have helped a lot of people.
Sure.
But the point is that algorithm that directed people away from us, talking about chloroquine, which is now FDA approved, determining it to be fake news, all of these algorithms are created by someone at some point.
Right.
Who helps determine that us talking about chloroquine, which again, cannot stress enough, FDA approved now for emergency treatment, who is determining that algorithm to redirect away from our content? Washington Post, the Southern Poverty Law Center, Snopes. This is the place that has 100 plus references to Ford and 0 to Reed, and they're the ones inputting all of the equations. I don't know, I assume it's like Goodwill Hunting where there's equations on the walls and shit. Inputting the algorithm that will exist forevermore that never seems to be recalibrated and corrected in the right way. That's why this is concerning. Not saying that we should go out and give Reed the Ford treatment, because conservatives are consistent. I think there needs to be some kind of proof. I think that when you compare the track record, this is speculation, of Christine Blasey Ford, or you compare the track record of Brett Kavanaugh, where they couldn't find anything, to Vice President Joe Biden, who routinely sniffs small tweens on camera, the American public is more likely to believe the latter. And that's the thing. They had to do so much legwork for Brett Kavanaugh, and Ford turned up nothing. Right?
It just goes to show it's all about power.
Right.
It's not about who it is. It's not about actual principles. They've shown that they're not principled. They've shown that it doesn't matter. They can't follow their own rules.
By the way, really quickly, and then I want to come back to this. Really quickly, let's bring this up, CNN. Look, still, hospitals, healthcare workers overwhelmed. We've had this on all morning. There has been no mention of the masks, the sanitizing masks, no mention of the approved new therapeutics, no mention of the progress or headway that we're making. Why do you need an hour and a half to talk about how some hospitals are overburdened? No time. You can't give a chyron to, we stepped up testing faster than in the history of ever?
Just one?
But Stephen, that would be helpful.
Keep this in.
This is CNN.
Put this in context. We've all learned history, right? In school. You were homeschooled. But we've all read history books. What do you think would rightfully go in the history books if you read a chapter? That some hospitals were overburdened. That might get a paragraph and a half. But kids learning history will probably learn that the private sector stepped up, retooled, and created more supplies than ever in the history of the American workforce, and created new medical innovations that had never before been seen across the globe. That's what the history book will read. So right now, in a monumentous moment in history, I think all of us would agree, CNN isn't even tracking with what will be in the syllabus for 5th graders. Okay, and going back to this is my point. Christine Blasey Ford, they had to go up there and make up stories, right, with Ford. They had to make up, gang rape. They ran a train on her. Remember, they provided this opinion, this commentary. We believe that, we'll do Brodigan. We'll have him on Friday, I think. I apologize, because he's probably already too drunk. They were with Christine Blasey Ford. Remember, they had Brett Kavanaugh cocked his head back and laughed. That was in an article. He gang raped and cocked his head back and laughed. That's what they did. That's what they had to try and run with to convince the American public. And by the way, it didn't really work. Now, the reason it didn't work was because by all evidence that we have available to us was untrue. Now, they haven't covered, read the accusations against Joe Biden at all. So 100 plus references to 0. Why do you think that is? They wouldn't have to make anything up with Joe Biden. They wouldn't have that uphill battle. Before they finish the headline, like if they're about to announce it before going to the break, and they are going to say, hey, after the break, we will talk with Mrs. Reed, the accuser who says that Joe Biden raped, people are going to vote guilty. You mean the guy who rubs shoulders and has biker girls giving him lap dances at pizza parlors in front of the camera and sniffs small children? Guilty. You don't have to say Joe Biden went to a party and jammed a red Solo cup up somebody's rectum to get people to believe it. You just say Joe Biden was being Joe Biden and this lady claimed she was raped, and everyone would believe it. You would see more of a disapproval rating against Joe Biden immediately than you saw at any point against Kavanaugh during that trial. Why? Because it's more believable. I'm not saying that it's true, but it is remarkable how much work and effort they put into ruining the reputation of Kavanaugh, who kept a journal, for crying out loud. Yeah. He kept a journal that vindicated him because he was such a dork. His biggest crime was he likes a few Schlitz on weekdays sometimes.
Yeah.
Come on.
Joe Biden smells children.
I'm sure Bruce Lee has some thoughts about this as well.
Bruce Lee, what are your thoughts on the Joe Biden issue there with the children? Well, you see, when Joe Biden smells children, he can crash, he can sniff, or he can snarl. If you put Joe Biden into a playpen, he becomes the playpen. If you put Joe Biden into a nursery, he becomes a nursery. And he's guilty. Oh, well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's true.
I do appreciate
insightful, I told you.
That time, he gave us a definitive conclusion.
Right.
Yeah, he knew where he was going.
We have what commercials do we have? Do we have time for a commercial? I don't think we have time for a commercial break today.
That's fine.
Was it a Black Rifle commercial?
Yeah, we talked about Black Rifle.
Is there anyone else I need to mention?
I think we're good.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Walther, of course, you guys know gun sales are surging. Please do our only
Always
sales
protected.
pitch for Walther. Just try the Walther. There are a lot of great firearms out there. We've talked about SIG, HK, Glock. At certain points, it's like Mercedes or BMW. And I know right now we're going to have people do a fight. Mercedes, BMW, Ford is found on road dead. That's not the point. The point is, at a certain point, they're all good quality firearms. So I'm not going to do the whole, you've been using brand X. That being said, run a Google search, Walther PPQ review, Walther PPS review. Yeah. You will not find anything less than a stellar review. It is the best kept secret in the firearm industry, and they have the balls to sponsor the show. So do consider Walther and, of course, Black Rifle Coffee. It's better than most coffee. They fresh roast it. BlackRifleCoffee.com/Crowder. Enter the promo code 20% off. Do we have some more chats?
Yeah.
Let's go to some chats, and then we will wrap this up for today.
That's perfect. All right, so let's see. What are y'all's advice when it comes to being a conservative libertarian millennial who is in Asheville, North Carolina, known as the San Francisco of the East Coast? My name is Michael, and I'm a MugClubber.
Suicide.
Hey, Michael. Oh,
I'm joking. YouTube, don't take that seriously, but it is always an option. So I would say
no.
It's never an option. It's never an option.
We speak for Bill, and you say
ever. Never, ever, ever, except for when it is. So what I do think is important to note is at one point, this is something I've changed on. People have said, what have you changed your mind on, because you're so rigid? I've changed my mind on pot. That's something I've changed my mind on. I've talked about this. And not in the sense that I want to foot the bill. Yeah, right now. No, it's not in the sense that I want to foot the bill for stoners who are unproductive. But I do think that right now we need to remove it from the Schedule 1 substance list because of the CBD issues. And there does seem to be some medical promise for CBD. Right. And I always thought the state should have the right to legalize it. But I didn't like the idea of it. If it were in my state, I would vote to legalize it now, but regulated. In other words, people shouldn't be just... Anyway, that's something I've changed my mind on. And then something else that I've changed my mind on. I used to tell people, hey, listen, keep your head down until you are in a position where you can be open about your views, because I don't want anyone losing work, particularly in the entertainment industry. I've changed my opinion on that because you don't have that luxury now. I used to give this advice maybe going back to 2009, maybe through 2012. We didn't have the kind of landscape that we have today where there is nowhere to hide. If you have ever made a Facebook post, if you have ever put out a tweet, if you have ever released a video, or if you've ever been at a party or gathering or function, 10 people or less, where politics have come up and you've expressed a center-right opinion, you'll never be able to get away from it.
Right.
And I see people now trying to distance themselves from it, people who I know, who I know in my personal life agree with me. And we spent time together, then go on Twitter trying to say, I've changed my way. And I know that they haven't. And I go, I understand why you're doing this, but these people are not going to like you. Yeah. They're never going to be your friends. Yeah. So this is where the change my mind comes in, right? The idea is find the people whose minds you can change, and then the people whose minds you cannot change, make an example of them for the people who are watching. Mm-hmm. I would say, do the right thing, right? If you're a libertarian millennial in Asheville, I think he said. By the way, sorry about that. Grand Rapids stole your title, Beer City, USA, I think 4 years in running. So that's just another reason that, you should move to Grand Rapids. That's what I mean. Not taking any drastic measures, but, Grand Rapids. Or, here's what I would say. Do the right thing, but don't be afraid to be the bad guy. Do the right thing, but don't live your whole life afraid of people calling you a bad guy. Because guess what? We've been called a bad guy. Joe Rogan was called a bad guy because he said that a guy who lived his entire life as a man and within the next 6 months and without disclosing it to an athletic commission caved in a woman's orbital might be a bridge too far as it relates to transgender athletes in sports. And he was the bad guy. Right. Don't be afraid of being the bad guy if you're doing the right thing. And I do think that that's most important to keep sight of when we're looking at this right now because everyone's going to be offended, and this is remarkable too. I think Artie Lang was talking about this with Anthony Cumia. And I used to be on radio. Back in the day, the FCC was sort of the man you would stick it to. Mm-hmm. Now podcasts are free, right? They're open and available. There's no censor, but they're more censored than ever. Wow! Because it's not the FCC who might give you a fine for saying something scatological. It's you are basically outcast from society for saying the wrong thing, and that can come from what once upon a time was just someone listening from the radio who didn't like it and turn it off. They go onto social media and get it amplified. And what happens? You're no longer brand friendly on YouTube. And so people who might have been edgy at some point and maybe skirted the lines with the FCC and had to pay a fine, but it was a part of the show, they couldn't do this. They can make zero living today because they're not brand friendly. So we are more censored than ever, even though we were anticipating not having any gatekeepers and being able to communicate with people directly. And that's why MugClub is so important and the sponsors that we have, because we're not monetized here on the main Steven Crowder channel at all. That has yet to be remedied. And we're sponsored by viewers like you, not a foreign caliphate. And that's why, of course, we're trying to serve you as best we can. That's why we're taking your live chat. People who are already MugClub members, enter in the promo code Crowder. You get $30 off throughout the entire month of April at louderwithcrowder.com/MugClub, louderwithcrowder.com/schedule, so you can see when we air episodes, and we'll be doing some live streams as well. Like this is obviously a live stream. Jean-Guy will be live streaming video games, I believe, with Denagla. And we'll just be doing some live chat shows with you in the evening. So go check out that schedule so you can see when you can interact with us live. But it is remarkable that we are at a point right now where we are less free than ever to say the things that as entertainers and as reporters and comedians and, take the whole spectrum, it should be our duty to say. Our duty is to entertain you primarily. Unfortunately, we also take on the duties of the media because right now they're still at CNN. You should just bring it up, but we don't need to hear it. They're still just talking about cases and deaths. They're not talking about any of the positive.
Innovation or any of that.
So we feel that it's our duty to express that, though we'd rather, have Bruce Lee in third chair or Brennan in a dog cone. We find that more enjoyable. Yeah. But it is a scary time. And so we really do appreciate you guys signing up and supporting us. We really do appreciate everyone who sent the well wishes. And I know you're concerned about me overworking. I've gotten some of those messages. We are trying to make sure that we keep this a feasible burden for everyone on the team. And we are willing to take the acceptable risk right now of coming in and serving you because I know how lonely it is out there and this isn't of your doing. We know that a lot of you would love to be able to go outside, but you don't want to be shot in the street like, you're a pedophile circa 1842. I think that's what they did with pedophiles. I don't know. The point is, I understand it. Sure. I don't think they were completely out of line because it had city line. We don't hate you. You just can't be around kids. So I know that many of you are stuck home, quarantined against your will. This is the only way we could think to give back, was to create more content than ever before and give you as steep of a discount as we can possibly afford while still keeping people here employed because we know there are record layoffs. We really appreciate the support. We do consider it a privilege to be here with you every morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then every night, Monday through Thursday. Thank you so much. Do hit the notification bell. Subscribe to Crowder Bits. And, of course, it's not iTunes anymore, Apple Podcasts. We will see you. What is tonight? Tonight is, we have an Ash Wednesday tonight and some prank calls coming your way. See you then.
Bye.